Chapter 2, Rhymes. I sat at my table very nice. Mrs. passed out colored paper for our invitations. Also, she passed out curly ribbon and lace and paste and bottles of sparkly glitter. Just as a reminder, she said, we do not paste glitter in our eyebrows, and we do not put lace up our noses. And above all, we do not glue curly ribbon to our heads and pretend it's long hair. She looked and looked at me. I squirmed in my seat a bit because that woman has a memory like a hawk, I tell you. Finally, Mrs. went to the board and she picked up her chalk. On the inside of our cards, we are going to write a poem about graduation. Does anyone have any ideas for the first line? My friend named Grace waved her hand all around in the air. Roses are red, she called out. Yes, hollered room 9, roses are red. Mrs. smiled. She wrote it on the board for us. Okay, now what about the second line? Room 9 hollered, violets are blue, violets are blue. Mrs. wrote that line too. Very good, class, she said. Now who can think of the third line? Maybe we should try to mention something about graduation in this one. Does anyone have any ideas? A shy boy named William stood up next to his table. Graduation is here, he said, kind of nervous. Mrs. grinned real big. Excellent job, William, excellent. She printed it on the board. All right, there's one more line to go, she said. Let's try to make the last word rhyme with blue. Okay. She read the first 3 lines out loud to us. Roses are red, violets are blue, graduation is here. Room 9 thought and thought. Then all of a sudden, rhymes started coming out all over the place. My dress will be new, called Lucille. My dad's name is Lou, called Jamal Hall. We made it, woo-hoo, called Linny. Just then, Polly Allen Puffer springed out of his chair and he started laughing his head off. The zoo is PU, he shouted his loudest. And then all of room 9 laughed our heads off too, because PU is the silliest rhyme we ever heard of. Mrs. clapped her mad hands together. Boys and girls, this is enough, she grouched. She hurried to Polly Allen Puffer's table and she put him back in his seat. I do not appreciate that kind of behavior, young man, she said. We're trying to write a nice class poem here. Polly Allen, and your rhyme was entirely inappropriate. After that, I tried to stop giggling, but that silly poem kept on staying inside my head. And then, out of nowhere, another funny poem popped right into my brain, and I couldn't even hold it inside me. I quick jumped up in my chair. Roses are red, violets are blue, graduation is here, and your feet smell like stink, I shouted. After that, room 9 could not even control themselves again, because that poem was the funniest thing they ever even heard. My teacher's eyes got big and wide at me. Junie B. Jones, didn't you hear a word I said? She said, very annoyed. Then Mrs. hurried to my table and she took me into the hall and she pointed me straight to the office. The office is where Principal lives. I know my way there by heart. There is a typing lady there too. She looked over the counter at me. Well, 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 would you look who it is, she said. I looked down at myself. Well, 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 it looks like me, I said kind of quiet. The typing lady pointed at the blue chair. The blue chair is where bad kids sit. Only I'm not even bad, but I still have to sit there sometimes. I put my feet on the edge of the chair and I hid my face on my knees. If you don't hide your face, people can't recognize you. Finally, I peeked one eye at Principal's door, and guess what? That guy was looking right back at me. Is that Junie B. Jones I see out there? He asked. I did a gasp, because Principal can even recognize me from one eyeball, apparently. I went into his office, and I sat in the big wood chair. Principal winked at me. I'm a little bit surprised to see you, Junie B., he said. You haven't been sent here for quite some time. I nodded. I know it, I said. That's because my behavior has shown considerable improvement. I pronounced the words very perfect. My teacher printed those words on my report card, I said. And guess what else? Showed improvement? My speaking? That's what. Because I don't say runned anymore. And I don't say thinked. And I don't say throwed. Do you want to hear me say them right, huh? Do you, Principal? I took a big breath. Ran. Thought, through, I said. I smiled, very proud. See, I told you. Mother says I'm getting a better vocabulary, I said. Vocabulary, said Principal. Whatever, I said. Principal smiled. Yes, well, I'm delighted with your improvements, Junie B., he said. But if everything has gotten better, then why are you here? I wiggled in my chair, very uncomfortable, because it wasn't my fault. That's why I said, what wasn't your fault, said Principal. I wiggled some more. Then finally, I told Principal how my teacher made us write a graduation poem and how she said the last word had to rhyme with blue. And so Polly Allen Puffer rhymed the word PU. I said, but then Mrs. got mad at him because she did not appreciate his behavior, young man. Only too bad for me because my brain thought of an even sillier poem and my mouth couldn't hold it inside. Principal closed his eyes. He did some deep breaths. All right, he said, let's hear it. I gulped, very worried. Then I made my voice real soft. Roses are red, violets are blue. Graduation is here and your feet smell like stink, I said. After that, Principal kept his eyes closed a long time and didn't say any words. Then, very slow, he put his head down on his desk and he started to laugh and laugh. His laughing got louder and louder, and then guess what? Then I started laughing too. That poem was a beaut, right, Principal? We are having ourselves a good chuckle over here, aren't we? Principal stopped laughing very fast. He raised his head. Junie B, we are not having a good chuckle, he said. I'm sorry, your poem caught me completely by surprise, but I never should have laughed like that. He crossed his arms at me. You are right about one thing, though, he said. Your poem is definitely silly, but silly things are not always appropriate to say in the classroom, are they? Your teacher made it clear that she didn't like what Polly Allen had said, Junie B, but you called out the poem anyway. He made squinty eyes at me. And please, don't blame it on your mouth, okay? You know you could have held it inside. I shrugged my shoulders. I don't know, I said kind of quiet. Maybe I could have. Principal tapped his fingers on my desk. It's very serious matter to disobey your teacher, Junie B, he said, and I want you to sit here and think about just how serious it is, because you do that. Could you do that, please? Yes, I said, I can. After that, I squeezed my eyes real tight and I thought and thought. Finally, I opened my eyes again. Good news, I said. I've said my last stink. Principal nodded his head. That is good news, he said. Then he stood up and he held my hand and he walked me into the hall. It's been an interesting year getting to know you, Junie B. Jones, he said. You're a fascinating little girl. Thank you, I said. You are fascinating, too. After that, both of us waved goodbye, and I started skipping back to room 9. Then all of a sudden, I stopped and I spun around. Yeah, only we are not saying goodbye forever. Right, Principal? Right? Because next year, I will get sent down here, too, probably. Or else maybe you and I will see each other on the playground, right? Principal did a chuckle. Right, he said. Hooray, I said. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Then I turned back around and I skipped to room 9 very fast. Because maybe if I hurried, I could still sprinkle glitter on something.